Hello and welcome to the CHRISTWVRKS podcast. Today I have Pedram Valiani, the mastermind behind Frontierer and Sections, who has now opened himself up as a producer slash sound engineer under the name Outlier Sound. That's what you're calling it, right?
Yeah, it's the biz.
Yeah, the biz. So what is the actual deal with that? Because I remember you kind of like started a Facebook page for it and stuff a fair while ago, but you've not been like pushing it that hard, or at least as hard as I thought you would have.
Yeah, just one of those guys that set up a Facebook page and never actually did anything after like 1 week and invited all his mates to like it and none of them replied.
But then you made t-shirts, right? You gotta make the t-shirts.
Gotta have the merch before you have the substance, of course.
Yeah.
True hardcore ethics. I have actually been working on quite a bit of stuff in the background.
Yeah, because that's what I find weird is that I personally know that you've been doing stuff with it. It's just that you're not kind of like being very public about it. Like, why is that?
Part of it is down to the fact that some of the bands that I've been working with haven't actually released the stuff that we've been working on together yet. One of the bands, I've actually had their album since we recorded it in 2017, and it's only now just been mastered. And I wasn't doing the mastering. It's Brad from Audio Seekers doing the master. But I've had that record for coming up to 3 years. And unfortunately, the vocalist was ill for quite a while, so he couldn't finish off doing the tracking. So that's like one. That was like the first project, probably around the time I actually started up the Outlier Sound page. That was the first record, and I've actually been working on a few more. I've got another record for a band called Pupil Slicer from London. Just finished their album. That's being mastered now. It's actually getting mastered tonight. And another band called Fawn Limbs, who the drummer used to be in Cyprus, Lee, and their guitar player is based in Finland. So they're kind of like an international collaboration, like what I do with Frontierer. And that album is, it's not out yet, but it honestly is like end of year album of the year material. Like, it's so good.
Yeah,
I need to let you listen to that.
It was amazing. Yeah, it's like really bleak, dark Dillinger Escape Plan kind of thing.
Yeah, the record that we're working on at the moment is it's absolutely insane. Like, I'll definitely need to give you that once it's done. I think you'll really like it.
Yeah, no, Matt sent me the last Fawn Limbs one, and like I'd never heard of them or anything. But he was like, you need to check this out, and I was just like, oh fuck, so basically there's a whole bunch of stuff that's about to come out, but yeah, you've just been sitting on it for a while.
But then also pandemic, and then like our own stuff is going to be pushed back. I mean, I wasn't planning on releasing any Frontierer stuff this year anyway. It was going to be next year, but I was kind of hoping it would be next year with a view that next year will be quiet because so many big bands have got stuff coming out this year. I didn't want to throw stuff out when there was so much going on, but that's changed things a bit. So I think it'll move to next year, and we've got a lot of stuff that we're working on in the background for next year too, tours and stuff. So looking forward to that.
That's the other problem is that so your plan there got kind of fucked up, but that everyone else's plans got fucked up, so you don't really know what they're going to do.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like, there's always this unknowing in music and stuff, and you just have to kind of ride the wave and work around it. But I mean, like I said, we didn't plan on.
Sorry, you're cutting out there, man.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, like, with music, you're just gonna have to ride the wave, and we didn't plan on releasing anything this year anyway. So next year should be a good year. I'm looking forward to that. And unfortunately, I haven't gotten around to doing any new section material, so I'm sorry that you're not part of those grand plans. It must be a pain in the ass to hear how I'm doing so much shit.
That's like, I get asked all the fucking time, like mostly by my tattoo clients. They're like, oh, so what's happening in the section? And I was like, I don't fucking know. I'm just like, you have to ask Pedram because he won't fucking tell me. So yeah, give the answer to everyone now.
we just haven't had the time, and like with everyone's work and with Frontierer existing and doing that as a band, there hasn't been any time to do the touring. Like in order to tour with both bands would need to be just a full-time thing, because at least for the 3 out of the 5 of us that would be doing this, to be able to tour and do release, I would have to be like the main job, and it's not going to pay the bills. So it's part of the reason why it's kind of been shelved. But I did toy with the idea, and I spoke to you not too long ago about a second album, and I think I might still resurrect that at some point. I just feel like if I want to release music with it, I want to do tours and stuff as well. So
yeah, it's a very live band for sure.
Yeah, so I'd like to see. I mean, it started off like when we released the album and stuff. If you remember, like things were really, there's a lot of cool shit happening. Stuff couldn't line up. Obviously, Owen parted ways with Section first, and then obviously with Frontierer. So there's just been so many variables that it's been like bottom of the priority list, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I'd hope to resurrect it. And I've said this to Dan as well. It's like, I think I said it to Mitchell as well. It's always been this band that is like an engine failing to start. Like it's just like you pull the cord on the lawnmower and it starts making a couple of noises and it just dies.
Like, yeah.
I feel like that's the really good analogy for how it's been. So I think next time it happens, it needs to be to have some things behind it and have the availability to tour with it and stuff. So never say never.
Yeah. Basically. Well, I mean, but that's so. I mean, you could argue that like Frontier is like the exact opposite of that analogy.
It is, because I mean we're constantly we're constantly doing stuff, whether it's tours or stuff in the background or working on. It's always like working towards a future date, something that's going to happen later on. So yeah, Frontier is always busy, and it's kind of like effortlessly busy. Like I don't have to work to keep things going. It just kind of keeps itself ticking over. And with a new release out next year, it's just going to be the same thing. Like it's just going to keep moving, and you just got to move with it.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah. So like in the way the Section is like constantly struggling to get properly rolling, Frontier just kind of burst through the door and was like, well, I mean, your first gig was like headlining a festival, right?
Yeah, it was.
Which is probably literally never happened before, ever.
We weren't headlining, but we were playing a festival for our first gig, and that was cool. So yeah, like playing to a lot of people in one go, and then things just spiraled off of that. But I think that was just because people really enjoyed the record. Like a lot of people really enjoyed the Section record, which was really cool. And opportunities and stuff came off of that. It was just it's in a different scene kind of music. It's kind of different, slightly different niche. But people
how would you define those two different scenes then? Like, and what would the differences actually be?
I don't know. Like the easiest analogy is that one band is faster than the other. it's like the it's the easiest it's the easiest reference, but maybe the lines are blurring a bit with newer material. I don't know. Like Section's always been sort of like the outlet for me, throwing all my hardcore punk crust and mathcore influences and stuff out, and all the kind of blasty stuff that I like to do. And then Frontier's being a lot more rhythmic, a bit more kind of I just call it Michigan. It's a bit more like that. And bands like Tony Tap Dance Extravaganza. I started doing some of that stuff with Section, but I couldn't write memorable songs out of it. So I just decided that that's where I was kind of drawing the line. And I know in my head where the line draws between the two bands, but people perhaps don't see that the same way I do.
Yeah, I'd say in Sections it's much more song orientated, and that kind of goes along with the kind of punk element of it. Is that it's more like songs with those sing along choruses,
Well, I mean, the thing is, that's another thing as well. Like the vocalist really makes a difference, and that's the thing that separates a record that's got you on it and a record that's got Chad on it. And we have some bands and influences that are more prevalent in, I'd say, in Section with like Atari Teenage Riot and stuff, or the Alec Empire stuff, the Speedcore stuff. that maybe doesn't really make its way into frontier music. And all things aside, like you're still one of my favorite vocalists. So if there's any other projects in future, like whether it's sectioned or whatnot, I still enjoy working with you, and I hope that even if it remains an online only thing, we'll still do another album. And if it doesn't tour, it doesn't tour. But every time you write music and record it, you always get this itch. Especially you, I know you come to me and you're like, "Oh, I really want to fucking play a show," and jump about to this rather than just standing behind a mic doing all the pain room recording shit.
Yeah, well, that was like, the whole process was exhausting because I mean you're getting me to do a lot more vocals than I would normally do, and as well as there's a level of precision that you wanted, which I also ordinarily wouldn't have bothered with, or not bothered with, but I thought it's more like I think everything else I'd done is much. The music itself was much looser anyway. There's I've never done anything with such a level of technicality before, so obviously then the vocals need to be a bit more technically precise. So it was like much more hard work and thought getting put into it. But then I never wanted to let my my selling point, I think anyway, is my level of intensity and like pure aggression. So I never wanted to let that up. So I remember being there for 2 hours straight and constantly just trying to pump myself up and being like, come on, I left every time I left yours I had a fucking headache basically. But
I think it paid off though, because we came up with by 4 or 5 tracks in, we kind of had a process. We knew you'd be done after 2 hours. We knew that it was just we're not going to be recording any more than 2 hours. We knew when it was talking about how to build up the patterns for the vocals to make it suit the music. We did things in chunks and it worked really well. So I think if we were to do another record again, I think we could build on that absolutely. And probably explore some of the more melodic. Yeah, and explore some of the more melodic stuff, like the stuff that you did on Rebuild, at the end of that track. I think it'd be cool to do some more kind of weird noise rocky type stuff as well. It'd be pretty sweet.
Yeah, one thing that I was also thinking about recently that would be really cool is the whole CHRISTWVRKS thing is it's been obviously completely produced by me, but because it's so a recording project, I was thinking about what would be a really interesting thing to actually see how it would turn out is if you did produce some of it. So if I sent you loads of stems and stuff, and how you would approach actually the creation of the atmosphere of it and stuff, because obviously I have my templates and everything for how all those songs are kind of set up now. I thought it would be really interesting thing to see how different it would sound if it was produced by you, as a producer, as producer sound engineer. If I sent you loads of stuff that I used to create the songs, and then see how you interpreted it. Because also obviously it's that frontier section stuff. It's not to say that it doesn't have an atmosphere. It has a very particular atmosphere, but it's so different from the sort of cavernous, vast atmosphere that CHRISTWVRKS has.
No, I agree, and I think with the CHRISTWVRKS stuff that you've been doing, it's perhaps because we talked about your live setup and stuff before and how you're getting that translating live. It might be that the way the sounds and the stems are all designed, the sound design of it, is so entrenched in how you've made it that for anybody else to even pick it up, you'd maybe lose that momentum that you've created. So it's harder. I find it harder with call them synthetic projects or whatever to even with having when you've got the original bounce down stem of it, it's hard to make it sound anything like anything else other than what it does sound. So you're going to listen to the same record. One's going to be slightly more high fidelity, and the other one's going to be kind of a bit more crushed and a bit weird. And it's more a personal preference, which do you prefer? Do you prefer the sort of crisp producer sound, or do you prefer this this is just killing my ears? It's a bit lo-fi,
But then that's also depending on what level of mixing I do to each individual sound before you get it as well. So that's why I was thinking if I gave you it before like because like, you know, every one of my tracks has got like a lot of different instruments on it, and if I gave you it before I did anything to any of them, and it was completely up to you to decide how you would you know, take this sort of vast amount of instruments and then compile it all together without ever using any reference as to if you never listened to any of my stuff, that would be really interesting. But like that's one thing that I wanted to talk to you about is like, you know, you never went to like college to do any sort of sound engineering kind of stuff, right? How is that journey of learning, you know, getting to your point now of like being pretty well respected in the extreme music world as far as being like an actual sound engineer, or at least if you won't accept being well respected, the notion of being well respected, you are someone that's spoken of as having a very unique sound, and like, you know, that you can at least create sounds that a lot of people have like never heard before, and that are actually quite identifiable now. And there is people that are copying your sounds that you've invented as well.
I mean, I'd say, you know, I'd push back on that humbly and say that a lot of the stuff I've done, and I've always said this, and I've said this to like Mitchell, who's like used to be your bassist and stuff, who I still speak to quite a lot about music, is although the music that I've done, sounds and stuff, have all just been plagiarized from different bands who were never connected and just thrown into one and been like, I like this bit from that band, that bit from that band, let's just put it together.
But they would say that as well.
Yeah, I know. But like, I mean, that is, if I'm being completely honest, in like the purest form, that is what it is. As far as like, you know, being like a well-respected producer or stuff like that, like I don't claim to be anything. I'm doing what I'm doing, and I appreciate there are people out there who are influenced by that, and that's really cool. With regards to like where I was before and where I am now, and you know, more importantly, like where I want to go with it. The thing that started, I actually, you know, it's one of those things. Sometimes you don't know why you started something and you just ended up doing it and it's just carried on. I think that's maybe quite, I don't know, quite an awful way to look at something sometimes if you aren't enjoying it, for sure. But with recording bands, I think it was just that, you know, I started playing guitar. I started joining these audio forums for some reason. I don't even remember why. Like, I was members on like the Sneak forums and stuff, and I was on there, but I don't even remember why I got on there in the first place or why I bought an audio interface. I think it was like with guitar. I just thought I need to do something. Like I need something to like identify myself with. So I got a guitar, and then it just gradually went into, I'm going to record my mate's band, like with, you know, it was like Sidelock, Callie's old band years ago. I was like, I'm going to record them. So, you know, with some birthday money and stuff, I bought like a chunk of recording equipment. We recorded it at the house, and you know, it didn't turn out as great as I'd hoped. But from there on, it was just continuing onwards. And the weird thing is, of all these things, it's like I started to learn guitar by doing covers. I then took a view of recording with trying to get like my sound to look like other people's sounds. And then in the middle of that, like I had no clue how to like write. All the writing of all the songs and stuff was done by Mitchell, our old bassist. So I would always rely on him for guitar profiles because he'd always write in Guitar Pro. And I was like, how do you do this? Like a foreign language. Like I don't have no idea how you can write like this. So I think recording was also an enabler for me to write music, for sure. And then when I got Cubase and stuff, I remember I bought my copy of Cubase when I was in Florida, and I brought it back and then like installed it and stuff. And it's still the version of Cubase that I use today. It's like over 10 years old. It's ancient. And then I just focused on how to write songs, and everything else around, you know, producing and mixing and getting better with all that, and you know, buying new monitors and stuff, all came about with, I need to learn how to write my own songs because I don't want to just rely on Mitchell to send me guitar profiles. If I want to like progress this band and what I want to do with music, I need to learn how to do this. And then yeah, just loads of time editing MIDI drum notes, learning how to do MIDI drums, and synths and all that sort of stuff and getting guitar tones. It's actually quite mental. The fact that you've asked me that question, it's just like you reflect on it. I'm like, how the hell did I get to this point?
I think, and also because we are a bit older now, so it's like, fuck, I have actually been doing this for a lot longer than I thought I had.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because when I get time hops now on my Facebook, and it'll be like, you were on tour in Finland like this time 10 years ago, and you're like, fuck.
Yeah.
And you're like, I thought I was still in high school 10 years ago, but yeah, apparently not. There's two things that you said just there. Firstly, like, I thought it was really interesting that you said you wanted something to identify yourself as. What do you mean by that?
Well, funnily enough, the first like productions shell company thing that I started up around the time of when I was recording that Sidelock EP back in, fuck knows, it must have been like 2006 or something like that, ages ago, was Identity Productions. That was the name of it. That's what I started up with my friend Finlay, who's now, he doesn't live in the UK anymore. But
was that like Prestige Worldwide?
No, it was weird that I said the word identity and then I remembered the name of that production page. That's another Facebook page that Facebook business from a long time ago that hasn't really done much. But no, so your original question was why did I I heard that. Why did
I? No, I just think like was that like in terms of you were thinking that you wanted like in terms of like socially to identify yourself as?
Nah, I think it was just that I just realized like I need a hobby. I need something to throw my time into. Like I did, because like I got forced into all these shitty clubs and societies at school by my parents when we were at school. Loads I didn't like. I got forced to like try and take up the violin, which is the first instrument. I tried that. I did violin for like 2-3 months. Hated it. Ironically because of wrist cramp, but then I played guitar, so it's just it must be something about holding the up to your face. Yeah. So I did violin. I joined like a badminton club, like loads of sporty stuff. Did rugby, and then I was just sort of like, nah, like it's almost like looking at a world map and then being like, I'm gonna go on holiday there, and then I picked guitar and I was like, well, okay, I'll borrow my cousin's like nylon string, and for some reason my dad didn't want me borrowing anything from anybody, so he was just like, we'll get you like a small, like a starter nylon one for your birthday. Did that, and then that was when I was like, for some reason I just found the determination to stick to it, and because I stick to it, I was like, oh, this is quite cool. And it was actually after I think my appreciation for music came around the same time as a guitar. So I think I downloaded loads of albums off Kazaa or like like LimeWire.
Morpheus.
Well, it's actually funny enough. I mentioned this because I've told you this before, but like it was because I used to see like Sam and Pete Taylor and stuff at school going about with Offspring and Korn and Slipknot hoodies, and I was like, why is everyone obsessed with this shit? Like, what is it actually about? I need to like, it's the equivalent of like people telling you about a meme in 2020, and you're like, what is this meme about? But it was music, obviously. So I listened to these records, and I was like, I actually really like this. Fuck yeah! And then that led on to I want to be able to play their stuff because it's quite cool. So I got the guitar, and things moved on from there. So like, I needed something. I needed something to do. Basically, it's a long story short for the answer.
But I think you are the kind of person who, like, if you like commit yourself to something, or if you decide you're going to do something, you completely like have to like learn and be able to like grasp and utilize every aspect of it. Like that's like, from knowing you, that's one of the main parts of your personality that like sticks out, is that for example, when I've come around to your studio and there's books there like about how to write plugins and stuff, and it's like I've been like doing like electronic music stuff for a pretty long time, and I still would never even dream about looking at a book like that, Yeah,
I've still got it. It's actually sitting there under my keyboard. Yeah, it depends what it is. I mean, I'd say you're right, but it's like it's very targeted, it's very focused. So like I have to have seen a benefit or some sort of output or reward for what I've done in it before I then continue that mindset. If I just say I'm going to learn something tomorrow, whether it's like, I'm going to learn piano tomorrow, but I don't actually have like an end goal with it or whatever, I'll say it, but then sometimes I just won't commit to it. If I've actually put it into practice and a few key ingredients have come about and I've actually got something from it, I've learned a song, I've done something, and I've picked up a skill, then that snowball reaction will continue. But I guess at this point with music, there's still a lot of stuff I haven't done that I'm hoping to just do now. So
Like
I'm
what?
still like, it's more touring. Like I want to do. I'm not like I want to do like a big tour and just be at least like if I end up being completely settled fully in my final career, I can say I've at least toured everywhere that I wanted to worldwide. And if I can complete that objective, then I'll be happy. So that's part of the plans for the future is that I want to I want to do a good like extended European festival run or something like that, and play. There's a few festivals and stuff I want to play. Like I'd love to play like Download if I can make it happen. All of which are probably pipe dream things, or at least they seemed like it before. But now that I've done a lot of stuff, it's kind of like this could actually be a possibility. So, I've got a few things I want to still achieve with music, and to be honest, whether or not I do it, more take it on as a more full time thing with touring, or if it's like ideally that I do production more. I think I'm always going to be doing it, even when I'm like an old dad. Like when I'm like 70, I'm probably still going to be, maybe like at that time, this kind of music will be looked on as like the equivalent of like I don't know, an AC/DC record or something if I'm lucky.
Yeah.
I don't know how times are going to move, but realistically, there's still a lot I want to be able to do.
Yeah, I mean, like that when you're saying about the things sort of like seem like pipe dreams, it's like a really like setting like achievable goals and stuff. And do you feel like is that like something that you ever like consciously do to like try and like raise your like in terms of like the musical career? Do you plan things out like that as a progression, or are you just constantly like kind of just grabbing opportunities as they come along? Or
I plan things like 1, 2, sometimes 3 years in advance. I'd say two maybe, yeah, 2 to 3 sometimes. Like next year, obviously, I'm planning because of the pandemic stuff, and I know you do kind of do the same. But I think up until a point in time, I think you did that with a lot more willpower and structure than I had maybe in the last couple of years. Because I could see how you were developing with all the tattooing and stuff you were doing with your apprenticeships and the amount of time you were putting into it. Then I think sometimes I've got a tendency to be like, yeah, I'm going to do it, but then I don't actually do it, and I let things kind of wait a bit, and then I pick it up at the last minute. I'm like, oh no, got to do that. So yeah, I have I always look ahead. I don't just look at right now. But then I sometimes, if I've got a lot of time, I'll be like, I can afford to, as most people do, like I can afford to put something off for a little bit longer. But everything I'm doing with music has always been, at least for the last 6 years or so, always thinking about what's happening next year. And all my annual leave at work has always been like booked for whatever's happening the following year as soon as the new year comes in. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you do tour like quite a lot. I mean, and I would say you have what I would describe as a proper job.
Yeah, I don't by like the majority of musicians and like old fashioned standards. I don't tour like pittance compared to
No, yeah.
bands. So,
But,
yeah,
I mean, you tour more than I do.
Yeah, but I mean, then I'm not doing anything with Section. We're both in Section, but I'm doing stuff with Frontier. But it's still not a lot. But like, I'm really over, especially like recently, I'm really over this like benchmark expectation of how many shows you've got to play a year to prove that you're a band or any shit like that. Like I'm so over that. Like even though I've not, I've never been a band full time or anything like that. There's a lot of people that say there's still harder and stripes to be made to doing that, and I feel like why bang your head off a wall if it's I mean if that's what you want to do, absolutely go ahead and do it. I'd love to do that, but I don't have the ability to do that to sustain the level of means that I want, which I don't want to sacrifice for, the sake of being in a band. So I'm going to grow things within my band at the rate that I feel comfortable with, and that's all I've ever done, and that's all we've ever done as a band. And with regards to the job and stuff, proper job or whatever, like, did my educational time, fortunate enough to have gone to uni and stuff, and I'm working now, but especially with this pandemic, I'm working from home. I'm stuck working from home, and I'm looking for eventually opportunities where I can work more remotely, which will enable a balance between tour, professional life, and whatever else is kind of in between. So the proper job will never go because you always need it, but making that work around all the other stuff and vice versa is where I'm looking at next for the future, like how I can get that balance so I can do more touring, but I can also still comfortably live the way I want to.
Yeah, like, do you feel like even with the amount of touring that you do now, do you feel like it kind of becomes oppressive that you never have time where you are doing fuck all, like, because it's like every time you have time off from work, then you're doing your, like, even though it's loads of fun, it is like your other job, because there's a lot of responsibility, especially when you're like the band captain, like you are. There's a lot of responsibility that comes during a tour and making sure everything's running smoothly and stuff. Like, how exhausting do you find that?
That is every day. Like, it is, honestly, it's constant. Even in lockdown, I'm like, I'm just I'm restless. I'm like, I can't just sit and do nothing. Like, I've got to do stuff constantly. And it is exhausting. But since probably around Christmas time of last year, November, December time, things have really let up. There's a lot less pressure, or I put a lot less pressure on myself for a lot of things, and there's so many benefits that have come off of that, like mentally and physically, and just lifestyle changes that have occurred over the last little period that I know are going to be permanent changes for going forward. So there's been plenty of times where I've been like, oh, I really want to take this tour offer, and I want to do this, but I've got to I've got to work, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. That window is like, I'm going to lose that golden opportunity window if I don't do this sort of thing. I've had plenty of those moments, and I still have them to a degree now. But I think, on to a point, like if you're experienced in something enough, you can make those moments happen yourself. If you have got yourself entrenched in an industry, or you've got the right foothold, you've got the right people around you to make that happen at whatever time frame it suits you. So I don't feel as much pressure now as I maybe did, say, even as recent as 6 to 8 months ago. It's really changed a lot.
What is that, because of an attitude change or what?
There's a few things. Like, before, I think the main thing is, like, I was trying to balance work, band stuff, and then girlfriend at the time. And to be honest, like, I broke. Like, I couldn't do it, and the relationship ended. Not my decision, but like, I think it just showed that with trying to balance everything, I couldn't sacrifice. I just couldn't find the right balance of sacrifice. I was trying to do that as best I could, and it wasn't good enough. So I just thought, well, rather than beating myself over it, I just have to kind of do things a different way. So I think that was definitely a large part of why things have changed for me in the last little while. And then I think even as recently as everything with going with this lockdown has forced me to eat a bit less shit, as I'm not eating as much takeout shit. So I'm cooking like constantly, as most other people are, enjoying it a lot more, knowing that I'll make time for it. And if I'm able to work from home in more regular basis at this job or in any other job, then I know that these changes that I've made now are going to carry on for the future. And to be honest, they're the things that I've always wanted and sought out of a job. It's kind of like I'm at my dream position right now, except that I can't go play music because of what's happened. I'm actually I am actually in sort of dream territory here, but I know it's going to revert back slightly once things let up, and I then have to just kind of balance the level of experience with where I want to go, and maybe move on to a new place if it means I'm not going to get what I want right now.
Like, what music stuff have you? So, like, when you're saying you're having a good quarantine, like, what stuff is it that you've been getting to do that you weren't getting to do before?
It's crazy. Like I wrote like I think maybe in the first 2 weeks or 3 weeks of this since March, I wrote like 7 or 8 new songs that I was really happy with. Not ones that I was like, yeah, they're kind of demos. They'll work on later. Like there's a few in there that I'm like, this doesn't have to change in any way, shape, or form. Like this is complete. So,
Is
talking about
that
planning
Frontier
ahead.
stuff, or is it just
Yeah,
kind of stuff?
no Frontier stuff. So like with the Frontier third album, like as you may or may not know, like I've been writing like 2 records almost simultaneously just to kind of get ahead of the game. And finished that third record. That's with Chad. He's doing his vocals. And then I basically had a lot left over of stuff that was really good that I kept for a fourth record. And then the lockdown, I've been basically writing more and trying to perfect the stuff I had previously. So our fourth record is what I've been working on a bit. I've been doing some clips and stuff for Ibanez. They're going to go on their official Instagram channel, which is really cool. So I've been finding time to do the kind of administrative stuff in music that's not just like working on an album, that allows me to kind of better where we're going in the future, rather than just constantly being like, right, go to work, come home, got things to do, have dinner, make sure I go for like a walk, keep myself like in check physically, come back, write music till 9 o'clock at night, have an hour before bed, rinse, repeat constantly. You know, it's I've been able to pick up on all the administrative stuff, and it's been pretty good.
That administrative music stuff, like, you're quite fiercely DIY in terms of like you've. It's not like you've not had offers to like join or be taken on by record labels and stuff, but you've kind of not seen the benefit that they will, like, what they could offer you in terms of you've just looked at their offer and been like, well, I could just do all that myself. And for me, I'm like, why don't you want someone to do all the shit that you don't want to do? Why are you not willing? What is that cost benefit not worth it to you? Because to me, that's what I want more than anything, is for someone to do all the shit that I don't want to do, like all the logistical and administrative stuff. So all I have to do is the creative side.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you let go of too much, then you don't really have a hang on your business. Like, I think if you outsource too much stuff, you don't really have that visibility. So that's part of that. Part of it is that I just like to have visibility, like I said, of everything that's going on around us, so that we know what we can control and what we can't. And then part of it is like, yeah, okay, like I can have them do all the kind of boring stuff, but there's a price tag attached to that, and the price tag has always been way too high, in my opinion, or at least in the offers that we have had. So I'd say it's not about being like fiercely DIY. It's more about just like having control things on mostly your terms. And at the level that we're at, it's like, you know, if you're bringing in any money at this stage, all that money is basically going away to a record label for a few posts on their Facebook page and maybe a feature on their website. You know, it's like at the level we're talking about in the genre and the niche that we play in, that's really it. Outside of, you know, some of the major ones, you know, PR is a separate thing to being on a label. And yeah, they absolutely can help, and they can help on a lot of bands. I just don't think we've had an offer yet that's been sensible for us. So that's why I've never taken it. And I'd rather we had, you know, the disposable income to pile that into some tours or more vinyl and stuff, so that we're not paying out from our day jobs into getting all that shit together, because the label's taking 80% of it, so that they can, you know, do whatever they want with it. Like, so, you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I get you. It's just like it's basically a cost benefit analysis, and then also you're kind of a control freak.
It's because you want the fame, Jamie. You want to be that rock star and be like,
Yeah,
on the label's
that
website.
is what it is, and that's why my music is like one of the more horrible. Yeah, that's my get out clause always, is that my argument is like my tattoos and my music is just too horrible to, like, no intelligent human if they were seeking fame, would ever do anything similar to what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nah, I mean, I get it, and I think, you know, we've had label offers. If we approach any on this third record, then, you know, we'll go in and say, look, this is what we've done so far, on our own. You know, that needs to be recognized. You know, what's the deal? That would be part of the conversation. But I mean, it's unlikely to happen. And, you know, these labels, a lot of labels, it depends who they are. If they're bigger, you know, majors, or if they're independents, they'll have different views, different contracts and stuff. There comes a point where probably quite a few of the labels that maybe make us offer now can't offer us as much as we can maybe offer them, which is the harsh truth of it. But it depends who it is, you know, and that's no disrespect to them, but it's more, if they're going to take all that money,
yeah.
What
well,
are they realistically going to provide?
It's a business acquisition, right? And it's, you know, and it's about all it is. All business acquisitions are about leverage, and regardless of how little or how much leverage you've got, that's how much leverage you've got. And yeah, those two things need to balance out, basically.
I think that's the thing why a lot of bands get trapped, is that they want their success to happen so quick. Like, they want it to happen, and like their definition of so quick is like, oh, you know, like within a couple of years. And I've always wanted to be in a band that's had like a discography that spans over a couple of decades, you know, with Frontier. And that means that if we're not doing much in 1 year, it doesn't matter. It's still a year off the tally. I'd rather keep doing stuff for, you know, as long as it creatively makes sense, rather than just being like burn bright, burn fast, and then you know, die out having signed to, you know, Roadrunner or Century Media or whatever for a year.
Yeah,
I'd rather...
I mean, it's much better to, or like if you're talking about it in those terms, if you've got control, like complete control over it as its own entity, then, and without any intrusion from outside influence, then you can control its trajectory much better that way, if you're thinking in the long term.
I'd rather just have the longevity of you know, just being able to look back on stuff. Like, we have a first EP in Frontier, The Collapse, which I'm pretty sure that Bandcamp was set up in 2012. And I'm like, 8 years ago. That was 8 years. That's crazy. Like, nearly a decade. And like, does not feel like that whatsoever, because we've only been touring since, you know, 2016.
Yeah.
Sorry, Karen.
No. Like, yeah. I mean, I didn't. There was a couple of releases that I didn't even know about. Like, you know, before Orange Mathematics, I didn't even heard those until you put them up on Spotify a while ago, and I was like, oh shit. And it's just funny because it's, you know, you can tell it's the genius of it, but it's not like this fully crystallized thing that Orange Mathematics actually is, you know.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, you call it genius. I'm just calling it like refinement. It's like, I like.
Oh, I mean genius, like as in like the genesis of it.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I get.
The arrogance
like,
of Pedram Valiani.
What a compliment. No. Yeah, I know what you mean. But that's what I like. I like looking back and seeing, like, you know, what did this sound like in 2012? Where was it going? Like, seeing my you know, thought process and how things change. So I like that. So that's another reason why it's good to kind of just see how things go over a period of time, rather than just being like, cool, we've done one album, people know us about it now, and then we're just going to kind of, you know, head off from the face of the planet, like it seems to have happened with Sections. But
yeah, well, like, I mean, a lot of people would characterize and do characterize like Frontier as being kind of all about pushing the limits of what is either possible or acceptable or just like feasible within sort of, you know, like technical and like hardcore and metal or whatever, you know. It's just like, okay, we'll take guitar tone and we'll push it to the very limits of like what like normal guitar tone can be like, and then like, you know, like the rhythmical element of it and everything like that. Is that like something when you were first starting Frontier? Were you like, I'm gonna make something that's just fucking ridiculous, or was it something that more evolved?
Literally, I think the band or the album came about because I was like, I'm gonna write an album. I'm gonna write the album that Danza 4 was not, because I didn't like the album. I liked a few tracks of it, but I thought the album itself was really weak. So it was like, it's almost like an engineer's mindset. Like, I'm going to fix a problem that I see that maybe other people don't see, and I'm going to see how it turns out. So maybe it's like part of my career has come into play at that point. And it was nothing to do with like, I'm going to create the most weird, bombastic stuff. I don't know. I remember when I wrote that album, when I wrote Orange Mathematics, there was so much fun associated with it. Like, there was no thinking. It was just fun all the time. But it was like, I was really enjoying the riffs and stuff I was writing. I still have I still have a lot of fun now. For some reason, I have like specific memories in my mind when I reflect back to when I wrote that album that I don't think I'll get on any other release, because I think some stuff was just so, like, not new, because I knew I was going to do it, but it was really like, it was just a different approach to writing as well. It was probably the best time I had to actually write music myself. Sectioned aside, like, it was the first time I really properly wrote stuff that was kind of heavy on my own, and I didn't have to I didn't have to take on anyone's feedback, which sounds really shit, but like, I could just do whatever the fuck I wanted. There was literally,
you were allowed
limits or
to like
restrictions.
let your imagination completely run away with you. And I think also like I'm imagining you writing it, but I'm just like thinking about, there must have been moments when you were writing that song and then you'd like press like spacebar, hear it back, and you'd be like, I've like literally never heard a sound like that come out of speakers before, and you just get really, like, it's that moment when you get super, like, you feel that swell of excitement come up when you come up with something that you're like, this is it. And I think that's why Orange Mathematics was so like virally successful, is because like it was something that people could get excited about, and that's why it was like very particularly like a viral internet success, was because like it was the kind of thing that people were like, listen to this to their mates, and that's how it spread. Like, people were like, this is fucking nuts. This is something that I've not heard before. And so yeah, I can totally imagine you just sitting there being like, whoa, this is nuts. Like, I'm getting really excited.
I still get like that with some of my riffs sometimes, but the problem is that I listen to it back over and over again on like a walk or a commute or something like that, and I get really desensitized to my own music. So when I first write a riff and I hear it, and I'm like, wow, if I'm listening to that from the first time from the point of view as like a listener rather than like a writer, if I get a kick out of it, then I'm like, yeah, that has to stay. So yeah, I won't shy away from that at all. Like, I do like my own music. Like, I think anybody that writes their music should be proud and enjoy it. But that's,
if you don't get excited about it, then no one else is going to get fucking excited about it for sure. Like,
yeah, and that translates to being on the stage. But it's not like it's definitely, I'm trying to like word it from an angle that doesn't come from like an egotistical way, because it's not like that. It's more that I just get so excited about it. If I'm writing something like, when I was writing Orange Mathematics, I got so excited about it. I'm like, I have to have other people hear this and see what their take is on it. So I definitely had tons of moments like that when I was writing Orange Mathematics, and I still have it. I have it. The most I've had actually since then is on this latest album. I didn't really have the same thing so much on Unloved. Unloved felt more like work when I was writing it. I don't know what it was. There was something about it felt more like work. But on the latest record, it's been a lot more fun and just not giving a shit. And I think that's the way it always has to be, because I think as an experiment, like, not doing it that way means that what you do just kind of suffers and sits in sort of a halfway house. So so yeah, like, there are moments where I'm like, right now, that I'm like, fuck yes, like, I'll do a little dance or something like that. I'll be like, this is awesome. And it's not, again, it's not like a
when you listen back and then your face just goes. For CHRISTWVRKS in particular, that's when I know that I'm hitting it right. It was when I grim face involuntarily.
Yeah. No, I mean that is it, and I think everybody does that. I think it's a natural reaction. People won't call that out as much as they want, but that's what I think for me fuels improvements in my music. If I can get that natural reaction, because it's not forced. You do it because you really get something out of that moment in the song. If that can happen more and more often, I know that what I'm writing by my own standards is gold, and I need to keep going down
it's
that
a keeper, yeah.
Yeah.
So like you were saying just before about your like engineer mind, like looking at a problem and wanting to fix it. Like that's when people when I first joined Section and people would ask me about the band, and then I say like, oh, like, have you heard Frontierer? And if they said no, I'd be like, and they'd be like, well, what's it like? And I'd be like, the best thing I can do to describe it is that like Pedram is an engineer and it's engineer core, right? and like and
calculated.
Yeah, but it's like that's it. Like to me, it's like it's really funny how if you said that to someone like, right, imagine someone that works with like machines and mechanical, like, building mechanical things from like, the ground up and make it into like an extreme metal band, then that is fucking what Frontier sounds like. I don't care what anyone says, like that is exactly it. Do you think that's okay? So again, is that something that you is that like a natural thing that just kind of happened, or is that where you do you think there's any link there at all, or is it just me imagining it?
Yeah, there is, because I have a writing process. Like, when the way I start writing the songs, in my head, I've designed to not fatigue myself. So, like, I know from years of experience sitting behind a desk, getting like writer's block syndrome, I've got like a whole process in which I know how to avoid that. And I know when I'm going to be creative and know when I'm not. And then when I am being creative and I'm writing a song, I know what I need to do to sort of sustain the momentum of a song, so I'm not spending too much time working on a few bars or a few riffs, and it's going to be wasted. So I have really refined my own personal process over the last few years. The only problem with that, I'd say, is that there is spontaneity in what I do and what I write and the way I do it. It's not always done to that strict process, but it will hopefully not come through too much when music's released and finished, in the sense that you're not listening to something which just sounds like it's gone through a factory and it's still got that human element to it. So that's a fine line to draw. But yeah, like I don't sit with writer's block or anything anymore. Like I don't sit wasting time at my computer getting frustrated trying to re-record a riff. So there's loads of things I've put in place to stop that from happening. So writing is really, really enjoyable.
So like do you write a kind of song like from start to finish, or do you start off with a kind of particular notion of like something, like a particular musical idea that you want to get across? Like, it's like, for example, for me, often I have a particular musical idea that's like the most bombastic part of the song, and then I make that one section, and then I kind of work backwards from there. Like so it's rare that I will write something as like a kind of verse chorus kind of song. Like how is it that you go about it?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's not always like a linear thing. I think very rarely do I write a song completely from start to end and I'm really happy with it. I think I've done that a couple of times on the latest record, and that's been cool. But most of the time it depends. It goes between like, what am I in the mood to play? Am I in the mood to play something through a sort of cleaner tone? Am I in the mood to play something fast? Am I in the mood to play something slow? And it might start off slow but then end fast, or vice versa. So it depends entirely. I know when I'm writing stuff that's just kind of like cookie cutter, like for the sake of it. Sometimes I'll do that deliberately. Sometimes I'll write dummy riffs. So like I'll build a song, I'll write a riff that I know is deliberately shit that I know I'm going to want to change there, but I'll do it so that I have one continuous. Yeah, I'll do it so I have one continuously filled piece, and then I'll go back and change it when I find something that suits it more. And that going back could be like a year, it could be a few months, it could be a few weeks. It just depends.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's a good thing. Yeah, I think I've done that before, and then Yeah. Like that is like a really useful technique actually, because then you get to listen to it and actually sitting and having the actual whole time of sitting there listening to the song and how it plays out, and the amount of time it takes to listen to certain parts and stuff. Do you think sometimes when like I think because it's very easy to do things like that and perhaps be like when you're writing things on a computer, do you think it's you can perhaps sometimes be thinking too much about the listener rather than yourself as a creative entity?
I mean, when I listen, like I am the listener, so I'm considering why, like before I then think about what public any public perception is going to be. So if I'm writing it, I'm like, do I get a kick out of this or not? Am I enjoying it? Am I feeling it? Yes, no. That decides whether or not I'm going to continue with this idea or not. There's been loads of moments as well where I've started writing one song, I've come up with a riff that sounds entirely separate, and I'm like, cool, close that project, save as a new one, start writing another song. So like, I've maybe written like 2 or 3 riffs and started 2 completely different songs, just while I've been trying to work on one. So stuff like that happens. That happens as well. Hopefully that answers your question. I think. To answer your question.
Sorry, you cut out just a minute there. What was that?
No, I was saying, does that answer your question? I was just rounding off what I was saying.
Yeah. Well, there's other thing that about writing things on a computer, and you're saying as well about like it kind of being a bit too mechanical. Like in terms of you writing music for Frontier, like what sort of level of emotional investment do you have in it? Like especially with Frontier, because you're not writing like lyrics or something, which we hope at least are at a minimum, like they're going to be like some sort of emotional investment in it. But if you're only writing the music, are you writing it from like a mechanical like I'm going to write something that's just like as bombastic and extreme sounding as possible from a purely like sound engineer technical aspect, or are you trying to like emotionally invest within the music?
My measure of emotional investment is whether or not I get like a dopamine rush off of some particular break or bit in the song. Like that's my emotional investment. I get maybe there's nostalgia attached to that later on older material, but largely it's about like how do I get that chemical reaction in my brain going when I'm listening to a track and I go like wow, and that's why I think on the older material I only really get that sensation when I'm playing it live, because it always feels like it's something new when you're playing live, even though you're playing the same song. And that's why I think that's probably why a lot of people who write their music go off their old material, and there's probably a whole PhD study in that. But like, I think that's why they go off their old material, is that they don't get the same kick out of it that they previously did. So with all the newer stuff, again, I wouldn't say I'm like emotionally invested in it from the point of view of lyrics and stuff. And I don't have that level of what would you call it? Like there's no like lyrical writing, or I'm not dedicating a song to somebody or anything like that.
Well, that's more what I was getting at. Like, is there like for me?
No.
I think like I do, not always, but like even when it comes to the music, it's like there's certain emotions that sound a certain way, and I'm like trying to extrapolate that emotion into like an audible form. But then that's also with me, my stuff is much more like a sound rather than with you. It's sort of it's much more like a well, you play the guitar like properly, whereas with me it's much more like a kind of like
it's a textural thing. You're just trying to achieve like a texture rather than focusing on what the notes are. You're trying to find I know what you mean.
So you're more concerned with riffage basically.
I'm not like that. That's the thing as well. So all the weird sounds and stuff that the weird sounds or whatever it is that I'm trying to do, that's not. I'm never really focusing on like specific notes. I mean, maybe I am in the moment of recording for some level of consistency, but when we go to play stuff live, if I'm trying to teach the guys the song of how I did it, I have to reverse engineer my songs, and then I just find like, okay, that this note is like the closest thing we have to what I did on the record. Let's just do that.
Yeah.
Like that happens, and like I'm totally fine with that. There's a lot of people who aren't, but like if you can get the same, you know what I mean, if you can get that same timbre, same like feel across live, people won't care. Like, you know what I mean? There'll be occasional nerds and stuff who really like want to hear, you know, every single bit note by note.
Yeah, but
We're
then
not
it's
that
like,
kind of
well, why
band.
don't you fucking listen to the CD really loud then? You know, like.
Yeah. That's exactly it. So yeah, I'm not too concerned about that.
Yeah, well, it's like that's the thing is like when you watch you live, you are pretty. Well, now I don't want to say emotionally invested within your performance, but you're like very overwhelmed by the music. You could say you're kind of like really, you know, like, you know, there's nothing else happening in your brain other than what's happening on stage, you know.
Yeah, it's an adrenaline rush that, you know, if you do sports and stuff, you're playing a big sports game or something like that. Like it's an adrenaline rush that you get, and everybody gets, I think, when they play live. And yeah, you just focus on what you're doing for the next 40 minutes on that
Well, I would
stage.
say there is a lot of people that don't though. You know what I mean? Like that's like a pet hate of mine is heavy bands who just stand there and play, and I'm like, why the fuck should I care about what you guys are doing if you don't even care? And when it's the juxtaposition between it being extremely heavy music and people playing it aren't like kind of, you know, like really enthralled in it, you know. Because
I
that's
know
the other
what you
thing. A lot
mean.
of people, from the way that you look and your manner as well, they wouldn't expect you to behave the way you do on stage, like you do. Whereas, like when they meet me, then they're like, well, obviously that's the way he's going to be, you know.
I think it's just one of those things that's coincided nicely with the music. Like, you know, any, you know, stage performance or whatever, it's just coincided nicely with music. I think, you know, it depends on the band. It depends on their music. Like there are bands out there that just like to stand rigidly still on stage while they play their material. That's fine. I think the most important thing is you see that they, whether or not they enjoy it. Like you'll see, you know, if they actually enjoy what they do, if they are invested in their music. And also, like, it depends on how everything else is set up for their live show. Like, if they're just standing about, but they've got some really cool setups on stage or whatever whatever they've done to kind of get around the, you know, the visual elements and get across the visual elements of what they're trying to achieve, and they do that well and they execute it well, then, you know, as far as I'm concerned, that's just another part of the show, and that's another way that they are trying to demonstrate their art. Because you're not going to get bands, you know, all over that just, you know, like to jump about on stage or crowd surf and climb things and stuff like that, because it doesn't suit, you know, a large majority of music, even in metal music. Like it just doesn't work for everything. So it's all about tailoring your live performance and making it, you know, link in with your record performance, really.
Yeah, well, I think you're the first people that I played with that were really making an extra effort to actually tailor the live experience to make it fit the music and stuff. Because like I'd always wanted to do stuff like that, but the bands that I'd been in before was, you know, it was like, oh, you know, that stuff's like, why are you trying so hard? That's lame, you know, kind of thing. And but yeah, like.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like it's not coordinated. It's not, you know, it's not, nothing's pre-planned. It's just that we
No,
all
but even
know
just
that
with
when
the
we,
lighting and stuff like that, you know, like going to that level of effort and monetary expense, you know, it's a lot more than most bands are. Actually, I mean, actually, I just spoke recently with Tom from Wallowing, and we were saying that more and more bands are starting to do stuff like that. But you know, it's still vastly in the minority.
I mean, like part of that could be that some of the technology and stuff is more accessible to people.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's even more so now, but I think it has kind of always been there. I think more people are just kind of, you know, maybe jumping on a bandwagon that, you know, previously they didn't, and making a bit more of an effort with their stage setups and stuff. there's a lot of stuff that I see, and I try just like not to compare or whatnot, but like, see people that, are doing this full time, but don't have a lot of the what I would deem to be the necessities kind of lined up, as you say, that you think would be kind of essential for functioning, whether it's functioning logistically or on a stage. And I mean, that does reflect on them and maybe reflects on us in a different way. And I use that as a personal measurement of like, well, like, where do I want to take things next? How do I want to improve things, or like, are we doing, I think it's never a case of we're doing too much, but yeah, you do notice these things for sure.
Yeah, I think I mean, it's gonna make me sound like a dick when I say this, but like, I always feel like, if you want to keep progressing, you look around at the people that are on your level that you're at the moment, and then you just go like, wow, I need to make all of them look bad,
I mean, a lot of people don't. I guess a lot of people don't.
And I don't mean that. I don't mean that is like that's the objective, is to make them look bad. But you need to like try so hard that you're elevating yourself, like, rather than just being like, I'm okay, like, here, like you need to be like scrambling desperately to elevate yourself.
Yeah, I mean, if you see a band, or if you're watching, a band that you're maybe disappointed in, there are people, sometimes if it's before a show, you're like, fuck, we need to be better than that. Like, some people use that measurement. I know we've said that amongst ourselves. We're like, oh, we need to up our game or whatever. That's really just a measurement of your own performance, and saying like, we need to kind of expand on that, and it's giving yourself a future goal. It's not shitting on anybody else. It's just like, we need to we need to consider these things more in our next performances and stuff. So I think that's important, because that's feedback that you take from watching other people perform.
Yeah, well, that's it. This gives you a what you call it, like a benchmark, and like a level of understanding of you can only understand yourself in relation to other things. You can't understand yourself just as like a subjective entity, or objective entity. You're a subject within an environment.
Yeah, it can't be too insular either. Like, I think you need to have these external influences and factors, whether or not they're all positive.
It's better.
Or negative
positive ones. Is like useless, right? And positive feedback is like,
I mean,
unless it's very specific.
It is, isn't it? Isn't. I mean, I think a lot of musicians will happily take or respond to a compliment, but quite a lot will also avoid any negative criticism. A lot of people don't want to be like, you don't want to take it or whatever. And I've seen negative comments and stuff about our music. Sometimes I've skimmed over them. Sometimes I've interacted with them and been like, okay.
Well, you mean like the guy, the fake drums guy?
He's like he's a meme. He goes around everybody. I thought it was just us, but he just trolls everybody about all real drums, no samples. He's actually got his own dedicated meme Facebook page now, actually.
Oh, really? What legend?
yeah. He's got his own page dedicated to him. I don't mean like that. I don't have any other concrete examples. I was just sort of speaking from reference, really.
Yeah, cool, man. Like, we've been talking for like an hour now, so yeah, we better wrap it up. So yeah, what are you gonna do before we all get back to normal life? What's your final goals before we have to re-engage with the universe?
Well, I'm trying to work on this 4th record. I'm also doing a crash course on programming language called Python. So I'm working through a book there. I've been doing some projects on that. So I'm trying to finish off those before we go back. And there's a few things tying up some stuff on the band plans for next year that I'm trying to finish off as well. And I'm absolutely living on the new Call of Duty at the moment, playing Warzone all the time. So I got to play that more in the downtime.
Yeah, I'm ordering a headset now, because I need to hit that as well. My cousin was trying to get me on it, and so if you're on it as well, then okay.
Have you got a PS4? Have you got a PS4? Yeah, we need to get on it and do Warzone. I mean, Warzone is basically Fortnite, but not lame and not for 5-year-olds.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like PUBG, right?
Yeah. They basically just lifted the same idea, and then removed all the cartoony kid element and made it what the game actually is. So
And
that
also
game is
about like 60 million quid at it as well, probably.
and it also takes up the majority of your hard drive, which you find with every update, because there is never a day when there is not an update for that game.
Fuck's
It's
sake.
honestly massive. It must be one of the biggest PlayStation 4 games because it's
So I'm probably
ridiculous.
gonna have to delete Red Dead Redemption then.
It's big. I'm pretty sure it's bigger than Red Dead. So
Yeah.
you'll probably get that and Red Dead and not much more.
Okay. Right. Cool. Right. Well. Cool, man. I'll see you on PS4 then.
See you there. Thanks a lot, man. Cheers.
Cheers.
Catch you later. Bye.